You're listening to the Cynic Radio Podcast. Now, your hosts, Igri and Cynic.
You are listening to episode 28 of the Cynic Radio Podcast, and I'm your host, Cynic. And with me, as always, Bill O'Reilly's own personal etiquette and protocol droid, IG. And back from jet setting around the world this week, Mr. Ryan George. On this week's show, we're proud to bring you our first ever Game of Thrones episode, some listener mail, and a little bit of really and what's up. Because we are the Cynic Radio Podcast, and we too find it just as troublesome that our co-hosts spend as much time in Florida as the president.
All right, boys and girls, Vulcans, Wookiees, and whatever else has been sending us all these messages. You asked it, we're answering it. This is listener mail. So our first question comes from Bruce in Savannah, Georgia. He asks, why do you keep changing cast members every week?
Well, we're not exactly changing, Bruce. Sometimes people need to go on vacation, and unfortunately, real life gets in the way of this show. So they're either on family vacations or they have prior obligations. We hired a bunch of jet setters to be on this show, so they'll all be back in their seats at the assigned time next week, I promise. Adam from Bismarck, North Dakota asked, will you be covering Spider-Man Homecoming and Guardians of the Galaxy 2?
Absolutely, we'll be covering them. We are, quite honestly, just pop culture junkies. We love things like that, and the more fun, the better. We like things that are fun, quite honestly. We don't want to watch, Hello Kitty Island Adventure. We don't want to watch rom-coms. We want to watch fun things, and the Marvel Universe has done a great job in everything they've been doing. So they are very prominent in things that we're going to do in the future, and it's not just those. We're probably going to be looking at Justice League when it comes up and Star Wars when it comes up. But yes, we will be doing Guardians of the Galaxies 2, and we will be doing Spider-Man Homecoming.
Yeah, that kind of leads into our next question, too. Susan from Rochester asked, which direction will the show be headed now that The Walking Dead's over? We're not going to give up on The Walking Dead completely. We're going to switch to a more of a Game of Thrones type focus as we get ready for the new season, but we're going to be peppering in movies and other TV shows. We're going to be doing more What Is Loves, and once in a while we'll stop back and we'll revisit an older episode of The Walking Dead, and then weeks before it we'll start to ramp up The Walking Dead. Last week we received a shout out on this fantastic YouTube show called Tom and Jay, or as I like to refer to it, Tom and Jay Eat Stuff. They're friends of ours. It's kind of an interesting show where they kind of review food, whether it be MREs from across the world or some of the packages that you can order. Like last week they did a scathing review of some gluten-free snacks. IG, have you seen the show?
I have seen it, and it is pretty interesting. And I like the MRE ones especially because you really have no idea what you're going to get when you open it because it's all in some other language. And quite honestly, as Americans, we're pretty bad about being anywhere outside of our realm. So we don't speak a lot of Russian or Chinese or anything. So it's kind of neat because they're opening packages going, oh, what the hell does that smell like? It's pretty fun. Check it out, Tom and Jay on YouTube.
Yeah, and you can't have a podcast without an audience. And over the last couple of weeks, we've gotten a huge boost from the Walking Dead Underground Facebook fan page. A really nice lady named Betty runs the page, and they're just such a great and interactive group of people. I would definitely go take a look at them. I mean, there's a lot of Walking Dead pages out there, but this one kind of stands head and shoulders above the rest of them. That's the Walking Dead Underground on Facebook. Miss out on that latest viral video? Didn't see the most recent trailer for the next movie coming out? In the dark about what the biggest song in America is? We've got you covered. Every week we scour the internet and look for the latest and greatest. This is What's Up.
What's up for me this week is the return of HBO's Silicon Valley. This hilarious show from the demented mind of Mike Judge, who brought us Beavis and Butthead and Office Space. Really kind of brings Office Space and Revenge of the Nerds, all kinds of absurd things that happen in our tech industry, all together in one place. The first 3 seasons were a blast to watch. Season 4 is coming right at you, and I can't wait to watch it. So Silicon Valley on HBO. Your What's Up.
Well, in a stunning turnaround of events, my What's Up this week is Fox News, for obviously listening to my Really a couple weeks ago and firing Bill O'Reilly. Just kidding. I know it was the outpouring of disgust from not only people everywhere, but all of his advertisers that ultimately led to the demise of the O'Reilly Factor on Fox News. And I can honestly say I could not be happier. Even though we all realize that this man would still be sitting behind that desk if the New York Times had not exposed him for what he is, I'm happy to say that at least the advertisers on the show were aware enough of their products and integrity to say no more to Bill O'Reilly. He continued to show what a class act he is when in his parting statement, he said he was disheartened to part with Fox due to completely unfounded claims. Unfounded? He paid $13 million to silence those claims. I would say there certainly had to be fire behind all that smoke. So to Fox News for finally coming around and seeing the error of their ways, no matter what route it took to get them there, you are what's up.
My what's up for the week is Thrawn, the most recent Star Wars novel by Timothy Zahn that reboots the classic extended universe character. I really enjoyed this novel. I was able to read it. I pretty much read it cover to cover on a flight. That's how engaging it was. As a big fan of the original novels with Thrawn, and also a big fan of Sherlock Holmes, I really liked how this novel kind of plays Thrawn as a Sherlock Holmesian type of character to Eli, who is his Watson, essentially, in the book. It's a really great book that kind of adds its own part to the Star Wars universe while also paying homage to classic characters and classic locations, connects to Rebels, connects to the movies. It's really, really great. He does a really great job. It's a little bit kind of almost more low-key than some of the other novels, maybe rushed at spots, and it definitely feels like a much more of an origin story, but it leaves a lot of room for future novels or future stories to be told, and I really, really enjoyed it. So if you're a fan of Thrawn, if you're a fan of him in Rebels, or you're a fan of him in the classic novels, you're really going to enjoy this book. So what's up for me is Thrawn.
What's up for me this week is director James Gunn. Not because he directed and wrote Guardians 1 and 2, by the way, which I predict will be the summer's #1 movie. Not because he was married to Jenna Fisher from The Office for like 8 years. I mean, who doesn't love Pam? But because Gunn made the announcement on Facebook this past Monday, saying he wanted to share with the fans first the news that he will be indeed returning to write and direct Guardians 3. He dropped this bombshell during a simple Q&A. Gunn credits his relationship with Marvel and Disney as big factors in his decision to come back, saying, "I can't freaking wait to get started. And it's high time that we all stop and take note of the brilliance which is James Gunn." And by the very different tone and enjoyable look to the recent Thor trailer, Marvel and Disney may have done just that. Gunn always centers his movie around fun, excitement, and masterful choices in music, which is huge for me. And if you don't believe me, go look at the sales of Guardians of the Galaxy Soundtrack 1. He's also one of the most fan-friendly directors in Hollywood, which I love. I personally can't wait to see Guardians 2, and now I'm really excited for Guardians 3. This week, James Gunn, you're what's up. We had so much fun last week looking back at Walking Dead's first episode that we decided to do it again. And this week we take a look at the pilot episode of Game of Thrones, Winter is Coming. We start the episode out with 3 men entering a tunnel, and only one comes out. 3 horseback riders dressed in black go through a frozen, quiet, creepy area, and it's a great visual contrast between the men of the Night's Watch and the all-white snow and the quiet, creepy, serene surroundings. Of course, one of the unlucky guys gets sent ahead, and he sees dismembered bodies laid out and some sort of odd symbol with an impaled girl as a ghoulish centerpiece. Ryan, did you know anything about Game of Thrones leading into it?
No, I didn't know anything about it. So I actually missed season 1. So I think we started season 1 about a few weeks before season 2 started. So I really didn't know anything about it. I'd been hearing about it, like on the websites like IO9 and other sites. It was a big deal was made of it, but not being a huge fantasy fan, I didn't really. I was like, yeah, I didn't really think much of watching it until like just the pressure from friends and other people and the media was overwhelming. I was like, all right, I gotta give this a shot and see if this is any good.
Yeah, I had heard a little bit about it. I had read the first book. It was a tough read, but it was worth it in the end. It was still a good book. It's very long and very detailed, which helps and doesn't help all at the same time. But I was very excited for when the show was coming. They did a pretty good job, HBO did, of pumping this up. I was there when it premiered. It was...
Yeah, HBO definitely the PR machine was in full effect for it. I knew very little about it other than it was a venture and fantasy based, and which did cause me to read the books, which, like you said, is a good and a bad thing because it does give you a lot more context to the story. And in certain areas, they did stick to the source material pretty well, and others they made huge changes. Now, IG, I know organization's a big thing in your life, and seeing these bodies laid out in this neat little symbol out in the middle of nowhere, and this creepy little girl's a centerpiece. At this very moment, how organized is your freezer?
Oh, God. I need to take lessons from whoever laid that out because that was amazing. My freezer's nowhere near that organized. My freezer's very well organized, but oh my God, that was so cool.
Yeah, whoever did that has a pretty good understanding of what body art should look like and a good sense of what would scare the ever-loving shit out of somebody. The one writer that sees this sprints back to his friends and tells them of his terrible discovery. The three head towards the body, and of course, one of them dismisses it. And it most definitely will cost somebody their lives. We find out that they're there to track wildlings, and that if you abandon your post, you get beheaded. Ryan, would the possibility of being beheaded be a better option than staying in this very wonder if you get out alive land?
I mean, it was terrifying, and if you saw the status, the kind of nature of the bodies there, I don't think it's any better than being beheaded. I don't see an option. I think you run away and deal with the whatever the consequences are, because that was terrifying. Even just watching it, I think I was sold in that moment just because the effects were so great and it was genuinely scary. That almost sold me on the show right away. It's like, oh wow, this is a different kind of fantasy. This isn't the stuff I grew up with. This is good.
Yeah. There's definitely a parallel between The Walking Dead and them. I mean, the way they started this out, they knew that they had to grab people right from the moment go, with everybody having such a short attention span, that the second that White Walker kind of rose up behind one of the Night's Watchmen, I was like, wow, this isn't what I expected it to be whatsoever. So the Walker rises up behind the naysayer, who no longer says nay, and quickly cuts his head off. The poor guy that found the bodies is wandering around by himself, only to see the impaled little girl is woken up with these really scary blue frozen eyes. What a better way to end a friendly hike than to have your coworker's head cut off and tossed at you. I guess it really depends on the coworker, though, right?
No, totally. And you got these blue-eyed, blonde-haired people running around. What a way to say, hey, the Aryan race might really be evil.
Ryan, what was your thought on the overall opening scene? And were you scared out of your mind to start out?
I was. It was definitely kind of terrifying and done so well. You know, I'm a big fan of like I read a lot and I really love like a strong kind of prologue to any book. Like if you can hook me in that, then I'm hooked for the rest of the book almost. Even if it's like, even if it goes downhill from there. And I felt like that opening scene was so strong and so well done, and it was pretty much the same as it goes down in the book, if I remember correctly. And I think that it hooked me. I think visually it was stunning. It was terrifying. There was intrigue. It did a ton of world building with barely saying a word. You know, there was a ton of world building built into that one scene, and so I think it was just really strong and really hooked me again into the show and definitely into the episode. Just right in the first couple minutes.
IG, how do you think it compared to the Walking Dead opening, though?
Knowing that this is more of a fantasy thing, because I knew that going in, it was a little less shocking, but it might have been a little more beautifully done. So that's the trick. The imagery was very distinct and very contrasting, as you said earlier. It was really easy to see things, but very graphic. I think that helped us. So visually, I think it may have been more impressive, less shocking than The Walking Dead.
I loved it, but the cynic in me, hence Cynic Radio Podcast, was a little worried that we were going to get Walking Dead in the snow. And I was like, I hope this isn't a large part of the story going forward, because we're already getting this sort of content, maybe not as nicely displayed, but this sort of content from another show. So I was hoping that it wasn't a direct ripoff. And it wasn't until, after the opening theme did I see that, this was just going to be a small portion of the show. A very important portion, but a small portion. We start with a great theme song that it had me from jump. I love the way it worked visually with the buildings being built around it, the machine parts coming up from the ground. Still to this day, I have to admit that, 7 seasons into the Game of Thrones, I've yet to fast forward through the theme song or the opening sequence. Something about it I really enjoy, and I like how they just slightly change it every single season.
Yeah, well, it shows you things where things are happening. It kind of gives you a map. That the map doesn't mean anything to most of us because, it's all a made-up world, but it's like, all right, things are happening in King's Landing and Winterfell and Marine and wherever they're at. And I think sometimes it's even changed by the episode, like, all right, they've left here and moved over here, so we're going to change where they're
when
at.
one place was destroyed, they'd go over top of it and it would be smoking. It was just, it was a neat way to do things that I've never really seen before. And growing up, shows didn't change their opening. Even when people died, even when people were off the show, I mean, they would remove their name, but they would really never change their opening. So it's kind of neat that shows can do it on the fly. Ryan, what are your thoughts? And I know that you went to see the concert a couple months ago, but what are your thoughts on the theme and the opening landscape visuals? Do you love them or do you hate them?
I love them. I think it's so original too. Like when have we really seen something done visually like that, especially for an opening? So I think it was so unique visually. The fact that it covers the map again, it's a subtle bit of world building. We're seeing this is a real world, and no detail will be kind of spared. So I think the opening does a great job of that. The music was really great. I mean, again, really strong music. And yeah, like I think they've gone away from that recently, but it was great that like every episode you'd kind of get a little hint of like what's to come. We're going to be in this area and that area and that area, and I don't think they do it quite the same anymore. But yeah, it's just a really, really great opening, and I totally agree with you. Like I don't ever want to I never fast forward through it. That's the only show pretty much where I don't fast forward through the opening.
IG, do you like or hate the visuals?
I love the visuals, and the music fits in so well with it. I mean, it's very dramatic music and engaging music, so everything works so well with just that small portion of the show that could very potentially sell somebody on this show.
Anymore, I noticed that the shows that really catch my eye have a strong sense of not only visually bringing the show, but a music sense. I mean, I love TV, I love movies, but if you can combine that with great music, and we see this with the Guardians of the Galaxy movie and then the trailer for the second one, the Game of Thrones has always had a good sense of what's appropriate to be playing in the background. It just absolutely makes the scene sometimes. So we meet the Starks and we quickly learn that no one's a master archer at 10, especially Bran, but maybe not so much Arya. She hates Needlepoint as much as she hates Sansa. The Starks mostly being an unknown set of actors, except Lord Stark. IG, did you recognize old Boromir from Lord of the Rings? They didn't really change his looks much. Do you think that was purposely done so fans would connect with him quickly?
That might have been, and I didn't think about that when I was watching it, but, he was the guy that's like, fuck, Sean Bean's here. And then, the next thought is, all right, is this like a mini-series and not really a series show? Because fucking Sean Bean is here, and Sean Bean never lives through anything. So, yes, he looked exactly like he did in Lord of the Rings. I mean, there were some minor changes, but it looked like the same guy. Same haircut, same look, same everything. It was Boromir. There he was.
Ryan, did you instantly connect with him in particular? Like, you have this wide cast of Starks, but this guy looks almost exactly like he did in a blockbuster movie.
Yeah, I think it was smart to do that. Obviously there are the connections between the two. George R.R. Martin was heavily influenced by Lord of the Rings, so having an actor who was so prominent in those movies, and have him look the same kind of made for a nice little connection that brought us into the world. Definitely helped for me. I was a big fan of Lord of the Rings, and so having him there was enough of a connection, but not so much that it took me out of it. And he has a great presence, obviously. So I think that was almost like reassuring for whatever reason. Like, okay, this is gonna be good. I can trust him.
I mean, not even Phil Connors from Groundhog's Day has died as many times on screen as Sean Bean. He looks like but he should be safe. I mean, Lord Stark looks like he's one of the main characters in the show and should be around for many seasons to come, right? The costumes, Winterfell as a backdrop. IG, were you roped into Game of Thrones right away?
Oh, I definitely was. Just Winterfell as it was. I mean, it was kind of a cool place and really kind of felt medieval. I mean, it made you think of like old swashbuckler movies and Robin Hood and things like that, but maybe a little more serious. And it felt right, and it just kind of felt cool.
I wish they would have showed us like a bigger view of Winterfell. It always looked like we were only seeing corners at a time, so that kind of gave me the feeling that it might have been shot in different places. The costumes, the interaction of the characters, Winterfell, it had me right away. I was all in on this show by the time we got done with that very first scene with the Starks.
Yeah, I agree. Again, they did such a great job building the world, from the costumes to their interactions. Not too much exposition. They kind of just let things kind of let it breathe a little bit and let you kind of immerse yourself in the world. So, I wasn't taken out of it really, and it didn't. I agree. I think I would have liked to have seen maybe more of the scale, which has always been an interesting like how big is Winterfell, and like seeing it. The scale of it might have been helpful, but just the way that the things were designed, and again the way that people interacted, it really felt like a real world, and again I was immersed in it. So right off the bat, I was totally engaged, and not kind of disconnected or thinking about why did they do this or why did they make that choice. I was just kind of in it and along for the ride.
An older guy with the world's worst beard comes up and informs Lord Stark that they've caught a deserter from the Night's Watch. It seems to disappoint both him and Cat. The law is the law, Cat. That doesn't sound very promising. And we get our very first winter is coming. The poor sap that got away names the White Walkers and then is promptly beheaded. IG, in your opinion, why is it that Ned paid his explanation absolutely no mind? He basically outright dismissed it. Do you think it's because of the frequency of deserters that they get, or the story was just so outlandish that he's not going to waste his time on it?
Well, I'm willing to bet that the Night's Watch has its fair share of deserters, and Winterfell being the closest major place probably to the Wall has most likely something major to do with Ned Stark's willingness and ease at just lopping it off. I would think that, they've all heard stories. It's one of the things they do is that they tell stories to the children to try and teach them morals. They're basically Aesop's fables, but they're done in the Game of Thrones universe, so they're a little different, and they're White Walkers and dragons and things like that. So that being said, I think they just get probably one a month, and they decide, well, let's go out to the tree and do our thing.
Well, we find out that the Night's Watch is made up of mostly criminals, people that have been jettisoned from society, and you're not going to run north of the Wall because we've seen what's out there, so south looks like it's the most likely direction you're going to head. Based off the reaction, I'm not sure if they get a lot of deserters that are caught or come that way, but something struck me is it must have been more of an outlandish story where it's like, a dragon's come and he was burning everybody alive, and they're like, there's no such thing as dragons anymore. Ryan, what did you think of that whole sequence?
It shows you that Ned is kind of duty bound, and you see that. It was weird because obviously it's somewhat of an outlandish explanation, but he was so resolute and kind of resigned to his fate that he didn't strike me as somebody who was trying to escape or trying to run away or trying to bargain for his life. Like, he knew that was the end. I was a little surprised that Ned wasn't didn't seem as concerned about it. I think he was going to have to kill him anyway, or lop his head off. But I would have expected him to maybe be a little bit more intrigued, because again, he did seem like he was resigned to his fate. He wasn't trying to plead his way out of it.
The man who passes the sentence should always swing the sword. What a badass quote. There was a couple things that struck me about that scene. Number one, we find out later that Ned's sword is made of Valyrian steel, and I believe it's called ice. Am I right there? I'm not quite sure. But he just takes the guy's head completely off with one shot. Now, IG, do you think the governor from Walking Dead could learn a couple lessons from old Ned Stark about how to behead somebody?
Yeah, first thing you do is you get a sword that weighs a metric ton, because it's going to lop off pretty easily. Holy shit, was that sword massive or what? I'm like, man, you got to be a bad motherfucker just to carry that thing around, I think. Because I think there were two dudes carrying it for him, and he pulled it out and I'm going to say my little prayer. And then, whick, it didn't, like, if you can get it up, it's going to do the work on the way down. Yeah, the governor's got nothing on Ned Stark.
You guys are both parents. I don't have any kids of my own. What was your feeling on bringing Bran to watch that?
In this world, it makes sense. He's going to have to deal with their harsh realities, and you can't coddle your kids, especially in this situation. So as somebody who will be a leader on some level, he's got to see reality. And I think I guess it's questionable about what age that you start to introduce that to him, but I think it makes sense that he's got to see it because he's going to have to deal with it, and just the harsh realities of life in Westeros.
I don't know. I might have waited till he was 12. But, you're pretty right. We see this as a general patriarchal type of scenario where basically the firstborn son is the one that kind of gets everything, and the rest of them just kind of fall in line and are married to other families so that you can kind of join together and, standard old world, even our world type things. 10 still seems a little bit of a push, but that kid seemed a little mature as well because he seemed to handle it pretty well.
Well, he did have Jon Snow in his ear the whole time, kind of, hyping him up a little bit, like, don't look away, father will see. And it seemed a little young for me, and also, I mean, we don't know the exact line of succession here. We can only base it on looking at the age. With there being so many Stark men, I mean, it should be at least 10 or 15 years before Bran has to take power, right? After they're done with the whole beheading thing, we come across another great visual. A stag and a direwolf look like they fought to a draw, and they're both dead. Possibly a little foreshadowing, or there's no way TV's become that smart. What do you think, Ryan?
That's good. That's a good question. I get. I didn't see it. Obviously, I didn't understand enough about the house sigils to really see it as foreshadowing. So in the moment, I didn't even think about it. But you're right. It was a great bit of foreshadowing. And even more so, yeah, you've got like the foreshadowing even Ned's future demise and the rise of his own kid. So yeah, it was definitely a great bit of foreshadowing.
Oh, spoiler alert.
There really should have been something in the subtitles, right? Like,
right, yeah.
No, this is just a fight between a stag and a direwolf. Pay no attention to what's happening over here.
No, I thought it was really well done, the foreshadowing was a little more minor as far as the whole show is concerned, and it's funny because somebody said, do you think it was a mountain lion? And that's where I saw the other foreshadowing, and he's like, oh, there's no mountain lions up here, So when you start to learn about the sigils, and you have the lion from the Lannisters and the stags from the Baratheons, and then the direwolves from the Starks, then you start to see what's going on, because the Starks and the Baratheons are kind of together in things, at least at this point.
The direwolf leaves 5 pups behind, oddly enough 5, one for each of the Stark children. We also find out that Jon is not a Stark, but a Snow, and he gets the run of the letter. Ryan, and at that point, why did you think they were treating poor Jon like a bastard child?
I guess the bastard child just doesn't get treated well. He's not one of, he's not one of, almost in that type of situation, I can imagine that there's always battles for power, and if you're a trueborn son fighting it out with a bastard child, that like kind of the bastard might make a claim for a throne or for a title, and so there's always going to be that kind of need to suppress the bastard, just kind of in general, that you kind of have to keep him down. So in this situation, I guess it kind of is built into the society that you're gonna keep that child down, and also I guess it meant that Ned was not completely faithful, and so that so he there's gonna be a stigma attached. There's a stigma in our society attached to it. So I can see that being realistic.
The funny thing is at this point, I don't think they had explained any of that though, because I rewatched it last night. I honestly thought he was like a ward or something. He was there to kind of help with the other kids. Like, hey, this kid knows how to do some of this stuff. Bring him in, help him do some stuff. And then, these entitled fuckheads are going to treat him like shit.
That was the one thing, because Robb did look decisively older than Jon, but Jon looked like he kind of belonged there. He acted like he belonged there. And he was also much more supportive than Robb. Robb kind of just stood there kind of with a distant look on his face where, Jon was in Bran's ear, father's watching, you don't look away, or father and mother's watching while he's doing the archery. He looked much more supportive and much more like he belonged than I guess actually was the case. It kind of surprised me a little bit that he wasn't, that he was basically, Theon, who is a ward, seems to get treated slightly better than Jon Snow, who's, supposed to be half a Stark. The one thing that I did find interesting about the story, though, is the fact that they give you the last name of the area that you're in. So since they're in the north, he's a snow. I thought that was a really cool and unique way to handle things.
Yeah, I think then, like, if you come from, like, a more desert area, then you're a sand, and, you know, that's how they do it for the bastard children.
We cut to King's Landing, which simply just looks amazing. Bells are being rung, someone has died. It turns out that Jon Eyre, the Hand of the King, is no longer with us. IG, were you creeped out by the whole rocks laid on top of his eyes, but they were painted open thing?
Yeah, that was a little odd. That certainly was like, what, dude? I mean, if they'd have put coins or something like that, it's like, all right, yeah, river Styx, all that. But they don't have river Styx because they've got old gods and new gods and all this other stuff, so it's different. But the rocks with the eyes painted on it was like, it's fucking creepy.
What do you think the significance is of that, Ryan?
I don't know. I'm sure there was some meaning behind it that I could not, at the moment, couldn't figure out. So I was kind of thinking it's just interesting. Again, all religions have strange rituals and aspects of it that if you're not in it, like I had a funeral to go to recently, and I'm not very religious, so you kind of sit through some of it thinking, wow, some of this stuff is just weird or dumb or silly. But it's built into whatever the religion is, and you just kind of go with it. So, in this way, it's another great way of the show kind of, again, building that world and building into it aspects of, weird little quirks or aspects of the religion that people follow.
Kind of almost like the dead are gone, but they're always watching type of thing. You know what I mean? Like they may have left us, but their eyes are always on us. We're introduced to Jaime and Cersei Lannister, and they're discussing the newly departed Jon Eyre and what he might have told. We find out that Cersei's the queen, and whatever her and Jaime have been up to, the king wouldn't approve of very much. It seems like Jaime has very little respect for the king and has no interest in being the new hand. Now, IG, in comparison, the opening scene, what are your thoughts on the Lannisters versus the Starks?
Well, the Lannisters, to me, seem that they're more plotters and connivers and kind of seeing what they can get out of stuff, where the Starks seemed very honest and genuine and kind of people of the land, people that cared about who was around them, what happened when they did, trying to do the right thing, where the Lannisters were like, what can I get for me?
What is your thoughts? We just saw the Starks up in the north, who it was all about doing things right and the laws and the rules and teaching the children. We cut to King's Landing and the Lannisters, and it's all about keeping secrets. It's all about the king not finding out, just sheer disrespect for the king. What are your thoughts of the Starks compared to the Lannisters?
You see the huge kind of dichotomy between them, like the Starks being duty-bound and kind of living on the land and living off the land and dealing with the elements. Like the elements are kind of built into their life and their world. And then you see the Lannisters, who are you can see obviously it's gaudy and opulent. You can even see like the kind of color palettes that they use for King's Landing versus Winterfell, just completely different. And just the way they're dressed, you definitely see that they're obviously completely different, and you can see an impending conflict between them. Like that, you can see that you have two groups that, in a very short time, we could see have very little alike, and that the Stark duty would at some point conflict with the Lannisters' selfishness.
Another interesting thing about the world that right off the bat struck me is all their personal correspondence, news, and everything is carried by Raven, which I thought was completely interesting and a little far-fetched at points, but IG, would you take your taxes and send it to the IRS via bird?
Well, if my only other option is to give it to Joey and send Joey on a trek to get there, I guess the bird's going to make better time. It seems to work for them, though, because they're moving things very effectively. I'm not a big truster of birds, but I guess that's the way you got to do things. I mean, it's a little Harry Potter-esque, but instead of owls, they used ravens. So, I mean, they're kind of grabbing at everybody here. We're going to get the Lord of the Rings people, and we're going to get the Harry Potter people, and we're going to pull them all in. So, why not?
Kat brings word to Ned that Jon Eyre has died. Apparently, he's some sort of father figure and very important to not only to Ned Stark, but the king, since he made him the hand. And that the king rides for Winterfell. And if he's riding this far out, he could only want one thing. Based off of Ned's reaction, did you feel that he might have just lost the world's biggest game of not it?
Yeah, you could tell he was not happy. That, again, it shows his his dedication to his, I don't know, to family or to duty in one scene, in one kind of reaction, that he realizes the gravity of it and the weight of it, and also that he's kind of resigned to having to follow through. And yes, you did a great job again without words. That feeling of just kind of almost exasperation, but kind of acceptance that you're going to have to deal with something you really don't want to deal with.
The king and his crew roll up, and if the Diaz brothers have taught us anything, you should always roll with a crew in case some hitters come up on you. Young Bran seems like he might have attended the Paul Monroe School of Parkour, as he climbs and jumps across buildings trying to get a better look at the king. While they're getting ready for the king to arrive, there was some debate on lack of alcohol, or will they have enough? Based off the size of Robert, I think food might have been much more of a worry. All the king's horses and all the king's men show up. IG, how do you feel the scene of the king was handled? Did it look true to you? Did it look like something that would happen in that time?
Oh, it really did. And they're going to need to make a fuckload of pancakes or something, because these motherfuckers are probably hungry. But that was a lot of people. It was a pretty good size of a traveling horde. It was impressive, especially since, it's a good friend going to visit a good friend. And yeah, you're the king. But the entourage you rolled with, I don't think you were going to get fucked with too much.
Ryan, what did you think of the king's arrival and the back and forth between him and Ned?
I really love that scene. I think the king's arrival, it made sense. Like, if you're the king, that's what you're going to travel with, both for protection and also just to show your power and your might. And it was great when he arrived, that initial scene where it was tense and you weren't sure how Ned was going to react, but then it showed that, they were obviously very close. And while Ned had a great, and also you could also see the tension because Ned hadn't seen him in a long time, so that he wasn't sure, now that he's king, are we still, you could see him treading lightly, like, are we still on the same level? Can we joke the same way, or do I have to treat you like a king? So that was really fun, and again, a great scene to kind of show their relationship and the dynamic, and again, you get a lot of context without exposition. We didn't need 20 minutes of them explaining that, their relationship and why he wasn't there. In that one scene, we got everything we needed to know about their relationship and how they relate to one another.
Yeah, you got fat. You got fat, and then he just kind of looked down at his belly. That was hilarious.
It really did. You covered a lot of ground on those two characters without saying very much. It kind of reminded me of a workplace friendship where you guys get hired on the same day, yet next thing you know, the guy that just got hired with you is your boss, and you don't really know, we used to eat lunch together, we used to be cool, but I don't know about this anymore. He showed respect for the king, but you could also see why both characters were so close and why we don't know the context of the war or how Robert became king. We know that they fought it together, but you can see why Robert is the king, and Ned took a much more or less assuming role up in the north, kind of out of the way. So we get the sense that Robert and Ned are close, and Cersei suffers from resting bitch face, which is an unfortunate and debilitating disease. As expected, Robert offers Ned the hand of the king. IG, how do you think Ned handled that? Did he play his cards well in that situation, that I don't want the job, but if you're going to offer it to me, I guess I got to take it?
I think maybe he ought to played a little bit harder to get. I think maybe he could have asked for some more shit. Like, can I be hand of the king and do it by Raven from here, kind of work from home program? Something. I think he needed more. But it also kind of, again, showed to his relationship with Robert that if Robert comes and asks for something, he's a true friend, and you do what the true friend asks.
Yeah, Robert seemed reasonable, but also quick to anger. I don't know if asking to telecommute in those circumstances would have been Ned's best play, but as expected, Robert offers Ned the position of hand of the king. You helped me win the throne, now help me keep the damn thing. We also find out that they were almost related through marriage. His sister's demise really giving no context other than the Targaryens had something to do about it. IG, did you find Robert's offer oddly timed in the crypt? I mean, isn't that slightly like asking someone to marry you in the bathroom?
Yeah, that seemed like an odd place to do that. Hey, I know this is the woman I loved and your sister and everything, but let's stand here next to the corpse and let's talk about business. Come on, man. Have a little decorum. I mean, wait till dinner, give me a beer, something else.
Oh, and kind of minimize the position. I mean, you're throwing your full support behind this guy, which was the reason for the trip, but then you're going to ask him to take the position with nobody around to actually see it. Ryan, do you feel that he did that because he was a little worried that Ned wouldn't accept?
I didn't find anything strange about that scene. I guess it's established they're close and they're friends, and that even though he's the king, their relationship is the same, or seems to be the same. And to me, it was more, wow, he just left his wife to go to the crypt of the woman he loved. So obviously, this woman meant something, and it was Ned's sister. So I saw it as more meaningful that, that was his real family there. That it was, essentially Ned, his sister, and him, and those were the only people maybe in the world. Now with Jon Arryn dead, those were the only people he could trust, and this was an important moment between him and Ned. And I'm sure he knew that Ned might not accept it, but maybe not, because Ned's duty bound, and he, was there ever really a chance that he wasn't going to accept it? So I thought that was a really meaningful place and time to offer that.
Kind of like this is what's brought us together, so this is where I should ask type thing.
Yeah,
I kind of got the sense of that too. We also got a real nice look at the way Cersei talked about the king when he wasn't around, but also the king's direct disregard for her feelings on topics when she's like, well, we've come all this way, can't that wait? And he just didn't even answer. He completely blew past her and went to the crypt with Ned. I don't know about you guys, but isn't it ironic that we find my most favorite character of the show so far in a brothel getting drunk? We see Lord Tyrion in all his majestic beauty and natural surroundings. Ryan, could we introduce the imp in a better fashion?
No, that was pretty great. Great introduction to him, and immediately made just was an interesting character. Obviously he's a great actor, and I just thought it was a fun way to introduce him, and also a way to introduce his relationship. The fact that he has a good relationship with Jaime. It was fun. That scene was a fun little scene to introduce him.
Yeah, as much as Cersei seems to have a distaste for Tyrion, Jaime seems to care a lot about him. Ig, what did you think about that whole scene in the brothel?
Well, there is such a thing as a closed door on a brothel, but Jaime being Jaime doesn't give a shit about any of the rules. He's going to do as he pleases, and I really liked it. And I mean, a good-looking woman in there notwithstanding, it was a good introduction to the Lord of Tits and Wine. So it was a lot of fun, and it showed that Tyrion, having a lot of disadvantages, being an imp and being kind of outcast by his own family, is still very present in each moment and smart and knows what he's doing, and sometimes knows more about what's going on than anybody else there.
Robert still seems a little broken up over the loss of his Ned's sister and his future wife at the hands of the Targaryens, which Ned assures him they're all dead. Robert replies, not all. We cut to a very young-looking Daenerys and her very loving and supportive brother Viserys. It looks like she's a bride-to-be and none too happy about it. Her brother is very concerned about her posture, but also decides that it's time to cop a feel. IG, is it safe to say that Dany's brother Viserys wins asshole of the episode?
And it's not going to be the last time that he does so either. I mean, there's just something about this guy. He just immediately kind of rubbed me the wrong way. And it's a good thing that he rubbed me the wrong way, because you kind of need some villains going on. And this is really the first actual villain that we get. He's the first one that we can see clearly that he's just kind of a prick. It works.
If Tom Hiddleston had played Loki with no charisma, that's what you would have gotten. Like, that's how he felt. It was like he was just smarmy and just a shitty person, and right off the bat you could get that. I will say though, depending on your feelings about violence towards kids, maybe he wasn't quite the asshole of the episode, but yeah, still pretty bad.
Agreed. We'll get there. There's somebody else in the running, that's for certain. But yeah, he also struck me as one of those people that is very angry and very entitled, but really has nothing to back it up. Like, he's not physically imposing. He doesn't seem ultra intelligent. There's no way that this guy is going to get you other than to yell at you. It's sort of like the guy that steals your parking spot, or, somebody that yells something out of a passing car, like, aha, I showed him. Viserys is only dangerous to his little sister, who's much younger and much weaker than he is. It looks like she's been promised to these horse riders named the Dothraki and their leader Khal Drogo. Ryan, did you notice that he looks oddly like the Aquaman in the upcoming Justice League movie?
Yeah. It's interesting. It's interesting how he played that character versus how actually charismatic he is. Seeing some of the clips of him in kind of like in Justice League make me think, like I still see him as Khal Drogo, so kind of hard to see him as anything else. But he's definitely imposing.
They set the tone for him right away as he rides up very imposingly with his blood riders. He's never been defeated in battle. He's a savage, of course, but he's also one of the finest killers alive. IG, what was your impression of Khal Drogo and his band of very unmarried men?
Ultimate badass. He was just very cool, very soft-spoken because he didn't say shit for quite a while. And even when he did speak, I mean, he spoke in Dothraki, and it was very cool, though. I mean, he just seemed like, this is a guy, maybe you don't poke that bear. That might be the bear you just kind of let it live, let it do its thing, leave it alone.
We cut back to the big feast at Winterfell, and Joffrey is clearly making eyes at Sansa, and they seem like the perfect couple. I mean, they're two good-looking young kids from great families. I don't think anything could possibly go wrong there, right? I mean, Ryan, it looks like they have a pretty good future ahead of them.
Well, you can tell right off the bat they're both kind of spoiled, bratty kids. So, just from off the bat, I think it's like neither of them were very likable, and I think you kind of get that right off the bat in that episode.
We cut outside to Jon Snow, who's hands down winning a fight against a training dummy. When Uncle Benjen shows up from the Night's Watch, Jon has expressed a desire to take an oath and join. IG, based on what's going on at the Wall and beyond, would you be ready to run out and join? Or stay there and continue to receive Kat's menacing glares?
Well, I'm at the advantage that I've seen a little bit of what's going on up there, but knowing that, yeah, it's filled with a lot of criminals and stuff, but it's also filled with second-born sons and down the line family members, because they aren't going to be able to do anything where they're from. It seems like it's still a good choice for Jon, notwithstanding he doesn't know that there's some mystical fucking dude creating body art with bodies. So, that being said, yeah, I think it's still the right choice for Jon Snow.
Ryan, in your opinion, what's more frightening, White Walkers or Catelyn Stark?
Catelyn Stark might be. It's obvious she has like serious disdain for him, which is bad. I guess it feeds into the reasoning, his reasons for wanting to leave. And it's like if her kind of disdain towards him is that bad that he's willing to go a lifetime in the cold and fighting White Walkers or wildlings, like it must have been pretty rough living with her.
We have a great interaction, and they used Tyrion sparingly in this episode, but a great interaction between Tyrion and Jon. Tyrion asked him, "You're Ned Stark's bastard, aren't you?" Jon takes insult as being referred to as a bastard, but then Tyrion explains that he identifies and tells him, "Never forget who you are, the world will not. Use it like armor, and then it can never be used to hurt you." One of my favorite quotes so far in the series, because it transfers to real life so well. "What do you know about being a bastard?" Jon asks him. Tyrion replies, "I'm a dwarf. We're all bastards in the eyes of our fathers." IG, what did that scene say about both Jon and Tyrion? And was Tyrion trying to help Jon, or was he being kind of snarky?
Well, I think Tyrion's always a little bit snarky. Just it's kind of part of who Tyrion is. But at the same time, I think, it shows that Jon is still conflicted about his place in the world. And Tyrion's trying to show him it's okay to be a little bit of an outsider. So I think it's more helpful than it is hurtful, and it just happens to come across in that, especially Tyrion Lannister way.
Yeah, and I think Tyrion's always so snarky. No matter what he does, it's done snarkily, I guess. And I guess Jon Snow is so dour and kind of humorless that it almost enhances the perception of snarkiness, I guess. I don't know if that's the right word, but yeah, I think he was trying to help him, and it comes across still as Tyrion trying to help him, and you realize how kind of secure Tyrion is with himself, or how he's learned that he has to be secure with himself, and he's trying to pass that along to Jon, who he must see, is not treated as a true Stark and is somewhat of an outsider in his own home.
The feast reeks of contempt between Kat and Cersei, which they're stuck in a battle of a complete frown-off, and we can tell there's some deep-seated tension between Ned and Jaime. IG, did you sense that the straight, stern manner of the Stark family and the taunting, more uppity nature of the Lannisters at some point would come into some serious conflict?
I did. I thought that they were going to have some issues because, again, the Starks are very honored people. They care of their honor. They're almost like Klingons, where honor is everything, whereas the Lannisters are very just kind of altogether kind of backstabbing type of people and looking to up themselves in whatever situation they rise in. They just don't mix all that well. I mean, it's like that coworker that will always try and make you look bad to make themselves look good. That's the Lannisters to a T.
Yeah, they're somehow raising their stock by lowering yours. Kat gets news from her sister that her husband Jon Arryn has been murdered, and possibly by the Lannisters, and they might be plotting against the king. Ryan, knowing that the last hand was murdered, if you were Ned, would you pull a Ferris Bueller's Day Off and fake sickness to get out of get the day off from being the hand?
If I was Ned, yes. I don't think. I think Ned is Ned, for better or worse. So he's gonna go through with it, whatever honor or duty kind of dictates he should do.
Yeah, that's the thing with Ned Stark is it's all about honor, and that's like I just said. The Starks are honorable people, and he's like, I already said yes. There's no backing out of this because I already said yes. Not like, well, I heard that Jon Arryn might have had a bigger problem than you're telling me about, so no, I'm not coming now. You don't get to play that game if you're Ned Stark.
Well, Alanis Morissette aside, if you were scared of flying and you got out to the plane and the wing was just hanging on by bubblegum and duct tape, I don't know if I'd be getting on that plane. I mean, he didn't want to go south. He didn't want to be the hand. He doesn't like the Lannisters, who are knee-deep in the Baratheon, kingdom. I think I would figure out a way around it. I'm not getting on that plane. There's no way, because you know that this isn't going to, if you think this is going to end, if you think this has a happy ending, you're not paying attention. We cut to Dany and Drogo's wedding. A Dothraki wedding without at least 3 deaths is considered a dull affair. IG, what did you think of the whole scene with the wedding?
I thought it was really neat, but I thought it was very telling, at least initially, that Drogo was paying no attention to Daenerys. Like, he was just kind of watching his horde do his horde things and watching the gifts come up, but didn't give a shit about what she was doing next to him. Paid no attention. It was very strange.
Well, considering all that, though, considering that you need at least 3 deaths to make it a good time, and considering everything that was going on around you, do you think it would have been a better idea to just maybe send a gift and take a hard pass on attending?
Yeah, just, send the RSVP as sorry cannot come. Here's $10 and a gift certificate to Bath and Body Works. Have a good time.
So we meet Jorah Mormont. Dany receives 3 dragon eggs, a white horse. The Dothraki don't have a word for thank you, and even have less of a word for consent, as Dany and the Khal consummate their nuptials. Bran decides to go for a mid-afternoon climb. He comes upon Jaime and his twin sister playing Twister. Jaime grabs Bran and tosses him out the window. The things he does for love. IG, do we now know what the brother and sister duo was keeping a secret?
Initially, like when I saw this, first of all, it was just shock, and then I started thinking about the episode again, and you take a look at Joffrey, and Joffrey kind of looks like them. A little bit. So, this may be a little deeper seated than we all think it is.
Ryan, in your opinion, what was more shocking, the fact that they were playing Bury the Crown, or how casually Jaime threw Bran out the window just to keep their shenanigans on the down low?
Both. Like, yeah. Initially, it was just shock. Like, wait, this is happening on it, because it's so taboo. Like, I can't even think of it time I've seen it on TV. So that was a shock. And then like throwing him out the window was also just as shocking. Like, you just didn't expect it, and it was that moment that cemented it for me. Okay, this is a good show. I got to keep watching. But yeah, both were just equally shocking to me.
Yeah, it definitely ended as shocking as it began. I mean, I didn't in a million years think he would just toss a 10-year-old boy out the window like that, and so casually, which spoke a lot to who Jamie was and how much he cared about his sister. Ryan, what are your closing thoughts on the episode, and give us your rating?
I would give it, I don't know how you don't, maybe a 9.5 would be my rating, maybe a 10. I think, having watched it, I started over from season 1 again recently, and like having watched that episode, you just realize like, how did they cram so much into one episode, and make it, and it didn't feel rushed. I would say my only minor complaint might be that the Daenerys story was a little bit kind of squeezed in there. It really felt out of place, and it was kind of just thrown in there, especially when you compare to the books and how much time it takes to kind of develop that. I feel like she got the short end of the stick, at least in this episode. So maybe that would be my one minor complaint, but otherwise, I mean, it's just phenomenal. Whether you're a book, again, I hadn't read the books at that point when I saw it the first time, and I was sold, immediately, and then by the end, I was just really, it was one of the best viewing experiences, especially for the first time watching a show. It was one of the best experiences I've ever had watching anything, and obviously it's just been kind of uphill from there. So I definitely give it 9.5, maybe even a 10 as far as a pilot episode. Just everything works. It built the world beautifully. The performances were great. There were some amazing lines. You really felt, even though it's this quote, like kind of fantasy world, like you felt it was real, and you were kind of inside of it and connected to the characters, and really felt that things were, it just felt real for which is rare for a TV show to feel that real and authentic.
I agree there. I mean, what a jam-packed episode as far as not only they did a season's worth of character building in one episode. They covered so much ground, and you right away you knew who you were going to love and you knew who you were going to hate, and it was such a leap forward as far as TV. I mean, within the span of months, we got just 2 epic shows that were just months apart from each other, and 7 years later they're both going not only strong, but they've grown to, they're going to go down in the annals of TV history as some of the best. But unlike The Walking Dead, it pains me to say Game of Thrones isn't guilty of taking full seasons off. If anything, the characters, the settings, and the story has gotten stronger as it's gone on. It's kind of finishing at a sprinter's pace too. Like now it feels almost rushed, the amount of content that they want to get through per episode, where something tells me that if compared to other shows, they'd be on season 14 before they got where they are now. Growing up as a full-blown D&D addict, which I know for some of you is real hard to believe, it's like the game has come alive on the TV every Sunday night, and it's the perfect combination of action, sex, and violence with amazing characters that you've grown to love and hate. And as gut-wrenching as the series can be sometimes, you also end up mourning. Winter isn't coming. It's definitely been here for the last 7 years.
Yeah, I'm with both of you guys. For me, this is a 10 episode, and I'm not going to hand that out lightly. This show is amazing, and this first episode just grabs you right by your ass and says you're going to sit down and you're going to become totally enthralled and in love with this. If you haven't watched Game of Thrones yet, there's always time. It's available. The first 6 seasons, I think, are out on DVD already. All of it's available streaming on HBO Go. This is amazing. If you have the opportunity and you haven't watched this, even if you're not a fantasy fan, this show will grab you. The acting is amazing. The writing, the storytelling, the visuals in this show, they do a great job in all aspects. And as Cynic said, they don't take any seasons off. This is a full sprint forward for the entire run thus far. You might have a couple of episodes that are a little bit slower, but you don't have any slow episodes. It's amazing, and you're really going to love it. So I think here for this first episode from the Cynic Radio Podcast, Season 1, Episode 1 of Game of Thrones, we're going to call it a 10. And that does not come lightly. A 10 out of us means it earned it. Winter is coming, and the next episodes will be coming again here in July. We're going to be covering all of those, but between now and then, we'll be talking some more Game of Thrones. We'll be talking some more Walking Dead. We've got a lot of things coming up. But right now, here comes Really.
So now, ladies and gentlemen,
Boys and girls, children of all ages, it's time for Really. I'd explain it. Just listen. You'll get it.
My really is for the Cincinnati Reds. The club may have had a fire sale and sold off half the team over the last 2 years, but in one of those trades, they must have acquired Snark as a player to be named later. Playing their rivals at home, the Chicago Cubs, for the first time since they won their first championship in over 100 years, between innings they would go into the crowd and not find their own rabid fan base at Great American Ballpark, but find Cubs fans. And by the way, being 5 or so hours apart, there's always a lot of them in the stadium. But once they spotted a Cubs fan in the stands, they would shine the bandwagon fan cam on them, put their pictures up on the Jumbotron, with awesome sayings under their pictures like, was a White Sox fan in 2005. By the way, that's the last time they won. Never been to Chicago. Doesn't know who Ernie Banks is. By the way, he's referred to as Mr. Cub. Bought this shirt earlier today. Thought Bill Murray played for the Cubs. It was just hilarious. You can find the article on Yahoo and the pictures on Twitter. Unfortunately, the Cubs beat the Reds 2 out of 3 games, but if baseball was scored on Snark, the Big Red Machine would live again, if not for just one weekend. The bandwagon fan cam. Really?
My really for the week goes out to Jesus Henao, who was charged with stealing over 130 smartphones at the Coachella Festival. So initially, this is actually a pretty impressive feat as far as criminal activities go. He stole 130 smartphones and was being tracked by police, but nobody could find him. But he was thwarted by the dumbest thing. So one would think if you're going to steal a smartphone, not that I do that, or I ever would. In fact, I've found and returned 3 smartphones in my life. One would think that you would turn off the Find My iPhone feature because it's a really easy way of tracking people or tracking your phone. But obviously he did not do that, and he was captured because a number of the attendees who had lost their phone just activated the Find My iPhone feature, and authorities were able to find him and his stash of 130 smartphones. So to Jesus Henao, who scored an otherwise impressive criminal feat, really?
So my really this week started out as a random promposal I read about on the internet, but I decided to just turn this into the whole promposal movement being my really, because they really bugged the shit out of me. If you are unaware of what promposals are, they are these huge grand gestures, much like asking someone to marry you, but it is just for prom. Asking someone to go to prom. This is so ridiculous on so many levels, I can hardly wrap my mind around it. Because in the world we live in, this social media world with Facebook and Snapchat and Instagram, these stupid promposals are just getting bigger and bigger with each person who is looking to seal the deal on prom night. I've read about people hiring skywriters and even getting tattooed. A lifelong commitment, getting tattooed to ask someone to prom, and generally costing themselves insane amounts of money just to ask a girl to prom who may say no to you. Whatever happened to just saying, hey, would you like to go to prom with me? And that being exciting enough to last you through an okay night with someone that you more than likely will never see again once you graduate high school. This whole thing is so infuriating to me, I just have to stop. But to whoever started this asinine tradition in this century, promposals, really?
Really for me this week goes out to Starbucks. Starbucks, who's now created this unholy aberration called the Unicorn Frappuccino. This ungodly concoction of who the fuck knows what. What is wrong with people? Starbucks is a coffee shop. Go get fucking coffee. Maybe a hot chocolate if you got your kids with you. But this is a little excessive. Jesus Christ, this thing is awful looking, awful sounding. I don't have the balls to taste it, quite honestly, because what is wrong with people that we're making this thing? That's just weird. Starbucks, go back to making coffee, please. Starbucks, really? And that's going to do it for episode 28. Can you believe it? 28 episodes of the Cynic Radio Podcast. We have now been with you for half a year. We've enjoyed every minute of it. I'm Igrahi. With me has been my co-host and personal stylist to Sean Spicer, Cynic. Also joining us this week has been Ryan George of the Jim Wits Podcast. You can find him over at thejimwits.com. And a quick appearance from Jules. Send us your comments, questions, concerns, and we'd like some dragon eggs to cynicradio@gmail.com. Find us on the internet at cynicradio.com. Look for us on Facebook at facebook.com/cynicradio. And find us on Twitter at cynicradio. And until next time, don't get captured.
Follow the podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and at cynicradio.com. Available for download on iTunes.
snarkiness, I guess.